Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving into the fascinating and sometimes frustrating world of land markets in India. I am Prashant Das from IIM Ahmedabad, and I will be your guide through this slightly muddy terrain. Get ready for some interesting insights into land market distortion. It's a roller coaster, I promise. So, what exactly is market distortion? Simply put, it's when prices and how things work out don't match what you would expect in a perfectly fair and competitive market. Think of it like a game of Monopoly where someone's secretly cheating. Not very fair, right? What are some potential causes of market distortion? Let's start with the government's role in all this. It's like a well meaning but slightly clumsy parent. They want to make things better, they really do. They try to create a level playing field with policies, subsidies, and taxes. But sometimes these attempts to fix things can end up creating new problems. You might have good intentions, but things don't always go smoothly. Take the 2013 Land Acquisition Act, for instance. The aim was to make land acquisition for development projects more transparent and fair. But in practice, well, it often led to disputes and unhappy farmers who owned the land. The result? Unexpected price hikes and lots of legal battles. And then there is Pasco's steel plant in Odisha, for example, a massive project with the potential for huge economic benefits, but also significant land acquisition challenges. It ended up becoming a case study in the tensions between development, community rights, and government policies. So, while the government's involvement is crucial, it's clear that even the best intentioned policies can sometimes create unintended consequences. All right, let's talk about monopoly power because sometimes it's not a game you want to play. In many areas of India, a few big players control a significant chunk of the land. Think of Mumbai, Gurgaon, Goa, Kerala, the hotspots. Big developers hold massive tracts of land. This allows them to influence prices and sometimes keeping them artificially high. This leaves many local residents priced out of the market, unable to afford even basic housing or businesses. It's not fair and it is not efficient. Then we have the issue of large agricultural landowners. In states like Punjab and Haryana, you will find a small number of farmers controlling vast stretches of fertile land, sometimes by buying out smaller farmers who simply cannot compete. And this isn't simply about wealth, it's about control over vital resources and influence in the local economy. It concentrates power and creates significant inequalities. Mining is another story. In states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Odisha, large mining companies often acquire massive amounts of land for extraction. This can displace indigenous populations, leaving them without their livelihood, culture, or even homes. All this often leaves behind environmental damage and broken communities. So, monopoly power isn't just about high prices, it's about control, it's about influence, and often significant social and environmental costs. It's a distortion that keeps many people from participating in a fair land market. A more equitable system would be one with greater distribution of resources and power. Now, let's talk about externalities. those hidden costs or benefits that spill over onto people who aren't directly involved in a particular transaction. It's like someone's having a loud party next door and you can't sleep. The partygoers enjoy themselves, but you suffer the consequences. That is an externality. In India, particularly in dry and semi arid areas, groundwater over extraction is a major issue. Farmers need water to grow crops, and when rain is unreliable, they heavily rely on groundwater for irrigation. This sounds harmless enough, correct? But it's not. It has far reaching consequences. Many people bear the cost who weren't directly involved in the initial decision to use the groundwater. So think about it. As farmers pump out more and more groundwater, the water table starts to drop significantly. This leads to several problems. First, it makes it harder and more expensive for everyone, including other farmers and local communities. It makes it harder for them to access water. Farmers using more groundwater reduce the water available for others, making it a classic example of the tragedy of the commons. Second, over extraction of groundwater can lead to land subsidence. The ground literally sinks, causing damage to infrastructure. We also see issues with saltwater intrusion in coastal areas. In these areas, excessive groundwater pumping causes seawater to seep into freshwater sources. That leads to problems with drinking water and agriculture. Third, the overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. This is common in intensive farming, which further contaminates groundwater sources. So, while individual farmers may increase their crop yields, at least in a short run, the costs associated with declining water tables, land subsidence, contamination, and reduced access to water for others create a wide array of negative externalities for the environment and surrounding communities. Let's talk about market failure. This happens when the free market, that supposed paragon of efficiency, acts more like a three legged race than a Formula One car. It sputters, it stumbles, and it definitely doesn't always get to the finish line. In India, we see some prime examples of this economic slapstick. Here is an example. Bihar's land reforms. The government tried to redistribute land after independence, aiming for a more equitable outcome. But powerful landlords, weak administration, and a healthy dose of corruption created a perfect storm of inefficiencies. The result? Land remained concentrated in the hands of a few, leaving many landless and poor. Next, we have the restrictions on selling tribal land. The intention was good: protect indigenous communities and their heritage. But the outcome? Well, the limitations on land sales can prevent efficient use of land, if there is any, and can even create a new class of tribal landlords, furthering inequality within the community. In both cases, we see that even the best intentions can lead to less than stellar results when implementation is weak or the policy itself is poorly designed. These are classic examples of market failure. The free market, left to its own devices or hampered by poorly designed regulations, doesn't always deliver what is promised. And sometimes the result is tragic. Yes, take my word for it. The Indian land market is a complex beast. My friends, land is a major asset, often used as a collateral for loans. But high transaction costs, inaccurate records, unclear titles, and disputes are just some of the headaches. And let's not forget the enduring influence of the caste system, which adds another layer of complexity. Urbanization, it's a two sided coin. India's booming cities are fantastic, but they also impact agricultural land prices, causing this negative correlation between urbanization and agricultural land prices. As cities grow, farmland gets converted, which affects productivity and has consequences for both city dwellers and farmers. A lot of farmers who would have otherwise farmed seek employment opportunities in the cities, which leads to lower productivity in agricultural land parcels. Then we face this enduring impact of caste system. Castes still play a role, sadly. Areas with more caste diversity sometimes have lower land prices. This can be due to differences in access to information and resources. Informal caste based networks can help sometimes, but they can also create inequalities because a lot of information sharing and a lot of social insurance happens within castes. So, caste concentration or caste diversity can be a double edged sword, which has an impact on the valuation and pricing of land. Then there are regulatory barriers and market failures. Administrative hurdles and regulations can also create market failures. Inefficient use of urban land, restrictions on non agricultural land, complicated land titles, lack of data on land titles, lack of data on the tenancy of agricultural land parcels, and limited access to credit for smaller farmers all contribute to the mess. So, every problem in this world has a solution, or so we believe. So, what could be some policy implications of some of these problems that lead to problems in the land market? The distortions in particular. So, what can we do? Let's improve land administration, reduce transaction costs, promote social equity, boost agricultural productivity, and make land use conversions easier. This might actually fix some of these problems. Fingers crossed. One of the major issues related to land market distortions can be seen in rural India. And this time I'm talking about agricultural land parcels. If a farmer owns a land parcel, the returns that she generates from producing food or cultivating on the land is just about zero point 0.5 to 2%. On the other hand, the land parcel owned by these agricultural households might be increasing every year at a rate which is substantially higher than inflation. But these landowners have no clue to know how their land prices are moving. In other words, they have a hunch that their household balance sheet is increasing in value on the asset side, but they are not very clear about how the values are going up. To solve this problem, at IIM Ahmedabad, we partnered with S Farms India, an agricultural land listing website based out of Hyderabad. We have produced an index called ISALP, IIM Ahmedabad S Farms India Agricultural Land Price Index. Our endeavor is to use data analytics to get a sense of how the listing price of agricultural land parcels in India have been moving. We have been fairly successful in tracking how the listing price of agricultural land, when I say listing, I'm talking about landowners listing these parcels for sale on S Farms India website. And we are tracking how their prices on average have been improving. If we do not analytically control for a lot of factors that lead to difference in prices between two time periods, we ourselves can be a source of distortion in the market because it may mislead into picking wrong signals about movements in agricultural land prices. We all know that land prices are determined by multiple factors. One set of factors relates to the productivity of the land parcel itself. Another factor relates to the time varying market related factors that relate to supply and demand. So in our ISALP index, we segregate these two different set of factors. Factors that are about that particular land parcel, related to its location, related to its soil quality, related to its distances from various nodes such as urban centers or transportation hubs. All these factors are kept aside, and then we flesh out the effect of time that has led to change in prices in agricultural land parcels. And that factor that relates to the effect of time becomes our agricultural land price index. To some extent, coming up with ISALP may help us bring transparency and hence make agricultural land parcel transactions fairer in the economy. But then again, we are stuck with another wicked problem, and that relates to tenant farmers. Only the farmers that own the land parcel have transparency and will benefit from how the land prices are moving. But what happens to the tenant farmers? So, because tenancy laws in India may be considered to be very onerous by a group of landowners, there is a tendency not to record the tenant farmers in government records. And as a result of that, a lot of benefits that are given to farmers only go to the owner of the land parcel and not the one who is tilling the land. This also might have led to some distortions in the rural agricultural land markets of India. Well, if you want to dig deeper into these issues, pun intended, here are some articles for your reading pleasure. So, thank you. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Indian land market and its distortions. Hopefully, you have learned something new about the complexities and challenges of this fascinating area of land market distortions.